In August of 2023, I got back into reading. Prior to this, I was a very casual reader and I only read like one book a year, which is not very much to say the least. Flash forward to today, and I've read 18 books so far this year. For reference, at the time of recording this video, it's July. I know there are a lot of people that read double the amount of this, but I'm a firm believer that any reading is good reading. Gold star for me. Now there's one book that kickstarted all of this, but we'll get back to that. Dark Matter is a book that has been on my radar for a while now. I keep seeing this book everywhere more recently, most likely because it has a new show streaming on Apple TV+. I was also at my local Barnes & Noble and I saw it at the recommended reading section, the little tables that are in the middle of the store, so I had to get it. Back to what I was saying before, the actual novel that got me into reading was Blake Crouch's debut novel, Pines. I got Pines, murder mystery. Looks really nice, look at that. Only 200 pages. Which was also made into a mini-series. Hey, look at that, they're written by the same guy. Basically, all I wanted to see is if my opinion on Blake Crouch's writing has changed after reading all of these different books, and if it still resonates with me the same way that Pines did, that kickstarted my whole reading journey to begin with. Which I will always have a soft spot for Pines for that. So, let's read Dark Matter. Back from Barnes & Noble, and I got a pretty cool book this time. I got Dark Matter. I will say I don't really love how the book cover doesn't go all the way over and has like this little red tab from the page underneath. I don't know, it just feels kind of cheap to me. Other than that, I'm about to read the first chapter and I'll let you know what I think. That's kind of a cool title page. It's not just the name on plain pages like most books. The majority of the first chapter was setting up Jason's life as like this normal family and him getting abducted. I would say it feels pretty similar to Pines in the way it starts, because it starts with a family and then he gets separated from his family, and I feel like the rest of the novel is going to be him trying to get back to his family. You know, pretty typical thriller stuff. So far, I enjoyed it. I am intrigued. I just finished reading the third chapter. I would say, like many thrillers, you're following the main character and he is very confused and doesn't know where he's at, and he's displaced in a new setting, and you as the reader are going along with that and getting different clues to build the story in the new setting that the character's in. With that all being said, I do feel like I know what's gonna happen already, which probably isn't good for a thriller. You're supposed to be really into the plot twist and that kind of stuff, but maybe that's what the author's going for, is you kind of expect what's gonna happen and then there's a plot twist. I don't know. So here's my theory. I think that this whole thing is linked with him being a scientist and him not doing his study that he wanted to do because of his family. And I think that this is him from another dimension doing the study that he wants to do. Yeah, and then so it's just like him going through with his study, and this is the experiment, and now he's in like a different dimension or something. That's my theory. I also feel like there's like a slight homage to Terminator, which is kind of cool, kind of spawning and not having any clothes on and being kind of disoriented. In this case, he's from like another dimension, I think, rather than being from a different time. I think it's Terminator. So I just broke the 100-page mark and I'm in chapter 6. And I feel like this book really reminds me of an old movie that I saw a while ago called Fractured, where this guy gets sent to a hospital and loses the family that he thinks he has. And he starts to question whether or not they're real. And I feel like this book echoes that same theme all throughout it. On page 85, the author uses a Mark Twain quote, and it really captures the moment exactly what's happening and how he's feeling, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm definitely enjoying the book so far, and I'm very excited to read the next 200 pages. So So I just read to the point on page 146 where Jason realizes that the other Jason just wanted to be in his reality. In between little chapters where they sprinkle in like a quote unquote like future that you thought that Jason, the current Jason that you're following, was having and like making up these futures, but I think it's just the other Jason living in his place. There's honestly something kind of poetic that both versions of this character want to live in the other world. The idea that the grass is always kind of greener on the other side. I don't know, it's kind of cool. Just broke the 200-page mark. 100 more to go. So the book is using a lot of interesting ideas right now and is kind of straying more away from the thriller aspects of it and more into the scientific and ideology aspects. So right now our main character is basically dimension hopping with another character. They went to a world where everything is completely covered in ice, one where they see themselves die before getting to the transport device that brings them to the different dimensions, as well as one where there's like a COVID-esque like plague going on. I'm very interested to see where this goes. I also think I like how they do the little countdown after they've used one of the little serums. Page 300. I just finished Dark Matter and I got a lot to say about it. The T.S. Eliot quote in the beginning of this novel sums up this book perfectly. What might have been and what has been, point to one end which is always present. Footfalls echoes in the memory, down the passage which we did not take, towards the door we never opened. What happens at the end of the road not taken, or if we made a decision, where would we be? Crouch ties this question to this novel and dives into multi-universal theory and quantum mechanics, which the extent of my knowledge on these topics are, to say the least, not very deep. I feel like this novel drew many similarities to Pines, making me feel like I knew where this novel was going to end, but as I turned each page, I was always interested in the path that the story was going to take. I read this book very quickly and I found that the story was always extremely engaging. Everything feels very fast-paced in his writing. It was in complete contrast to the Game of Thrones series, which I just read prior to this, making the story feel like it flew by even faster. I would say the first third of this book is thriller, followed by scientific explanation and intrigue, and concluded with different action scenes. I love the mystery elements of this book, and his writing is super simple to read, even with the scientific elements that he utilizes, making this novel easily accessible to any reader. I believe that these are the strengths to his writing, and that's why he got me back into reading to begin with. In the very back of the book, Crouch talks about his writing process for approaching a thriller novel like this. He states that he learned his process from Michael Crichton, and that the key is through researching a scientific topic that he finds interesting and exploring all the different possibilities underneath it. He states that this book was initially 3 different book ideas that he had that he put together to create one. And that's why I think there's different distinct tones, especially from the beginning third to the ending. I believe this format works perfectly though, because it makes the novel feel scientifically plausible from an average reader's perspective, and allows the novel to flow and not feel the same throughout the entire read, keeping things fresh. The book is definitely existential, showing how different decisions affect our everyday life. The word doppelganger appears many times in the climax of the book when discussing Jason 2, or the Jason that sets off the whole novel when he takes over our protagonist's life. I feel this draws a strong parallel to Freudian uncanny theory, where it states that the doppelganger, or a double, is a visual representation for the darker parts of the individual human psyche that they deny so that they can be perceived by other people in society. It represents the aspects of humanity that we humans deny in order to preserve our self-image, or the core aspects of what make each person unique. A classic example of that would be the classic Gothic novel Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with the double representing the unacceptable part of their ego. Without having to go too deep into the theory, many films and cinema utilize this technique, with the most notable being Alfred Hitchcock with his films The Lodger, 39 Steps, and Shadow of a Doubt. Hitchcock uses this theory to build his plots around the wrong man plotline, where the authority catches the wrong person, or the wrong double in this case. These people possess very similar attributes, making you question their individuality. With all this being said, the same psychological questions are being presented inside Jason. Jason 2 is seen as possessing all the negative qualities that our Jason doesn't possess, similarly to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as the wrong man plot line with Jason being imprisoned in the other timeline, as well as the different chapters with Jason 2 being questioned by those around him as the wrong man in his timeline. Now, overall, I did enjoy this book a lot, and I loved all of the different ideas that it presented. But I will say, I liked Pines better. Pines introduced me to this style of writing, as well as allowed me to pick out different tropes for this genre, making this read to feel a lot less tense to me. I still really liked this book though, so I'm gonna rate this book a 8 out of 10. I definitely recommend reading this book and checking out his other works.